My sister Shanice crawled across the floor of the Columns Hotel ballroom in her $340 dress, mascara running down her caramel skin, hunting for the pearl earring my father just knocked off my face. 36 guests filmed every second with their phones held high like they were at a concert instead of witnessing my family implode. My mama stood frozen by the crawfish étouffée and shrimp and grits buffet, her hand pressed against her chest, mouth open but no sound coming out. The Zydeco band had stopped playing mid-song, and the silence felt thick enough to choke on. I stood there in my cream silk dress, my cheek burning where his palm had connected, watching my sister's purple Mardi Gras gown drag across that polished wood floor collecting dust and shame. The scent of king cake and expensive cologne mixed with my own fear sweat. And I realized something crucial in that moment while everyone stared at me like I was the problem. I finally chose myself over their disrespect. And the weight that lifted off my shoulders felt like shedding a whole other person I'd been carrying for 35 years. My father Kenneth stood near the microphone stand, his tailored suit still perfect, his face a mixture of shock and rage that I'd said no to him in front of all these people. Aunties whispered behind their hands, uncles shifted uncomfortably in their chairs, and somebody's child asked too loud why Miss Shanice was on the floor. I touched my bare earlobe where the pearl used to sit, felt the heat radiating from my skin, and knew with absolute certainty that this moment would define everything that came after. But to understand how I ended up here with my sister on her knees and my daddy's handprint on my face, we have to go back 5 years to the night I bought my freedom. I just made partner at Caldwell & Associates, the most prestigious corporate law firm in New Orleans, and I was celebrating at Commander's Palace with my girl Keisha when I got the call from the realtor. The historic townhouse on Royal Street with the wrought iron balconies and the courtyard full of jasmine was mine, all mine, paid for with my own money that I'd earned negotiating contracts for oil companies and tech startups. I remember standing on that balcony the first night, looking out at the gas lamps and the tourists stumbling toward Bourbon Street, thinking I'd finally arrived somewhere my family couldn't touch. My office was in a high-rise downtown where I spent 60-hour weeks reviewing contracts and depositions. My fingernails always perfect, my natural hair slicked back in a bun that said professional and untouchable. I was good at my job, real good, the kind of lawyer who could spot a bad clause from 3 pages away and negotiate terms that made grown men nervous. That same week I bought the townhouse, Shanice dropped out of Tulane again, her third attempt at a degree she claimed she didn't need because she was gone be an influencer or a lifestyle brand or whatever dream she was chasing that month. Daddy called me on a Thursday evening while I was reviewing a merger agreement, his voice smooth like he was selling something. "Your sister needs help, Imani," he said, "and family takes care of family, you know that." I knew what was coming because I'd heard this song before, but I was tired and proud of my new house and feeling generous, so I wrote a check for $8,000 to cover her credit card debt. Mama called it a blessing, Shanice called it a loan she'd pay back next month, and I called it the first domino in a line I didn't know I was setting up. Sunday dinners at my parents' mansion in the Garden District became my weekly penance. The price I paid for being the successful daughter in a family that treated accomplishment like a character flaw. Mama would cook enough food to feed 40 people even though it was just the 5 of us, Daddy and Mama and me and Shanice and whoever Shanice was dating that week. The house smelled like butter and hot sauce and old money, with plastic runners on the carpets and the good china that only came out when we had company Daddy wanted to impress. I'd sit at that long dining table under the crystal chandelier that survived Hurricane Katrina, pushing red beans and rice around my plate while Daddy talked about his real estate deals and Mama fussed over Shanice like she was still 16 instead of 30. Every dinner followed the same script. Daddy would ask about my cases in a tone that suggested he was humoring me. Mama would mention how tired I looked and suggest I take a vacation, and Shanice would announce some new business venture that needed startup capital. The first few times I said no to lending her money, Mama's face would tighten and Daddy would launch into his speech about how I'd been blessed with opportunity, and it was my Christian duty to help those less fortunate. My spirit didn't take to it, that's what Big Mama would have said if she'd been there. But Big Mama lived in her shotgun house in Treme and only came around for holidays and emergencies. 6 months after that first loan, I'd written 11 more checks totaling $43,000. Each one accompanied by promises from Shanice that she'd pay me back as soon as her online boutique took off or her YouTube channel got monetized or her latest boyfriend's music career popped. Keisha warned me over beignet at Café du Monde one Saturday morning, her dark eyes serious behind her sunglasses. "Girl, they using you like a ATM, And you just keep giving them your pin, she said, powdered sugar dusting her lips. I defended them because that's what you do for family, told her Shanice just needed time to find her footing, that mama and daddy were from a different generation that didn't understand modern career women. But the truth was settling in my stomach like spoiled food, and I couldn't ignore it much longer. The breaking point started on a Tuesday in February when Shanice showed up at my office unannounced, her engagement ring catching the fluorescent lights like a disco ball. "Imani, I'm getting married," she squealed, throwing her arms around me while my paralegal watched from the doorway. His name was Marcus, a music producer she'd been dating for 8 weeks, and they were planning a spring wedding that Daddy was already offering to pay for, even though he told me my own budget would be $20,000 when I got married someday. We went to lunch at a bistro in the French Quarter, and she talked for an hour straight about flower arrangements and bridesmaids and the honeymoon in Miami she wanted, never once asking about my life or my cases or anything that didn't revolve around her universe. When the check came, she looked at me with those big brown eyes and said she'd left her wallet at home. Could I cover it? She'd Venmo me later. I paid, knowing I'd never see that money, and walked back to my office feeling something inside me start to crack. That night, Mama called to tell me about a wonderful opportunity, her voice bright with fake enthusiasm. "Your daddy and I have been talking, and we think it's time Shanice had her own place, somewhere she can build a life with Marcus, somewhere stable." I was at my kitchen table going over a brief, my townhouse quiet except for the jazz playing softly from my speaker. "That's great, Mama," I said, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "We were thinking maybe you could help her with a down payment," Mama continued, "or maybe even let her stay in your guest room until they figure things out." I felt my jaw clench, my hand tightening around my pen until my knuckles went light. "Mama, I have a 1-bedroom townhouse," I said carefully. "Oh well," Mama said, "then maybe you could co-sign on an apartment for her, just until Marcus's production company takes off." I made an excuse about another call and hung up, but I knew what was coming. They weren't asking anymore, they were circling, getting ready to demand. The Mardi Gras season celebration dinner was Shanice's idea. A combination birthday party and engagement announcement at the Columns Hotel, the kind of venue where old New Orleans families went to be seen. Mama had called me 3 weeks before, her voice tight with that edge she got when she was about to ask for something she knew I didn't want to give. "Imani baby, we need to talk about the dinner expenses," she'd said, "and your daddy thinks since you don't have children to spend money on, you could contribute more than your share." I'd been in a deposition all morning, my head pounding, my patience thin as tissue paper. "How much more, Mama?" I asked, and she quoted a figure that made my stomach drop, $5,000 for my portion of a party I didn't even want to attend. I paid it because saying no meant being the ungrateful daughter who forgot where she came from, meant listening to Daddy's lectures about pride going before a fall, meant Mama's cold shoulder at church on Sunday. Keisha had grabbed my arm in the courthouse hallway 2 weeks before the dinner, her face serious in a way that made my pulse quicken. "Girl, I got to tell you something and you ain't gonna like it," she'd said, pulling me into an empty conference room. "My cousin works at your daddy's real estate office, and she overheard him and your mama on the phone talking about how they already told Shanice your townhouse was gonna be hers after the party." My blood went cold, my vision narrowing to a pinpoint. "What you mean mine?" I'd asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Keisha squeezed my hand. "They planning to announce it at the dinner. Make it public so you can't say no without looking bad in front of everybody. They think if enough people clap and congratulate Shanice, you'll just go along with it to keep the peace." I'd sat down hard in one of the conference chairs, my designer heels suddenly too tight, my silk blouse suddenly too hot. That's when I called Big Mama, my fingers shaking as I dialed her number. Big Mama had listened without interrupting while I explained everything, the loans I'd never get back, the constant demands, and now this plan to take my home and gift wrap it for my sister like I was some charity case who owed them my whole life. "Baby," she'd said when I finished, her voice steady and sure, "sometimes the only way to teach people you ain't the one is to let them embarrass themselves in public." She told me to go to that dinner, to wait for them to make their move, and when they did, to call her. "I'm 83 years old and I done survived things that would break most folks," she said, "but I ain't too old to put my son in his place when he forgets who raised him." The night of the dinner, I stood in my townhouse getting ready, my hand steady as I fastened those pearl earrings Big Mama had given me when I made partner. My reflection looked calm, professional, untouchable in my cream silk dress, but inside I felt like something was about to split open. I drove to the Garden District with my windows down, letting the February air cool my face, And when I walked into that ballroom with its chandeliers and its round tables covered in purple and gold, I knew I was walking into an ambush. Mama hugged me too tight. Daddy kissed my cheek and told me I looked tired. And Shanice fluttered around in her expensive dress accepting congratulations from aunties and uncles and family friends who'd known me since I was in diapers. The food was beautiful, the music was perfect, and the trap was set. I ate my étouffe and made small talk and waited, my heart hammering against my ribs, my phone in my clutch with Big Mama's number already pulled up. When Daddy grabbed that microphone and the room went quiet, when he started talking about family and generosity and bonds that keep us strong, I knew the moment had arrived. And when he announced that I was giving my townhouse to Shanice, when 36 people started clapping like he just announced a miracle instead of a theft, I felt something in me finally snap clean through. I stood there with my wine glass in my hand, the room spinning slightly from shock and rage, and I heard my own voice cut through the applause like a knife through butter. No, I said, and the word hung in the air like smoke. Daddy's smile faltered. His hand still extended toward me like he expected me to just hand over my keys and my dignity. What did you say? He asked, his voice dropping to that dangerous tone he used when he was about to assert his authority. I set my glass down carefully on the nearest table, my hands steadier than they'd ever been. I said, no, Daddy, I'm not giving away my home. The room erupted in whispers and I watched Mama's face crumble, watched Shanice's mouth fall open in shock, watched every aunt and uncle and cousin lean forward like they were watching a reality show instead of my life falling apart. Daddy stepped closer, his jaw tight, his eyes hard. You defying me, he said, not a question but an accusation, and before I could respond, his hand came up fast and connected with my cheek. The sound cracked through the ballroom like a gunshot, and my pearl earring flew off, bouncing across the floor until it rolled under someone's chair. For 3 seconds nobody moved. Everybody just stared at the successful lawyer with the red mark blooming on her face, and I felt something inside me go perfectly crystalline clear. I pulled my phone from my clutch with hands that didn't shake anymore, tapped one button and put it back. Then I looked at my father and said quietly, you wanted obedience, you got war instead. I walked out of that ballroom with my head high, my missing earring insignificant compared to what was about to happen, and I waited in the lobby by the white lilies and expensive perfume until Big Mama's black sedan pulled up. She walked into that ballroom like she owned it, her silver hair perfect under the lights, her cane tapping against the floor in a rhythm that said somebody bout to learn today. But I'd added my own move to Big Mama's plan, something she didn't know about, something I'd prepared in my office the day Keisha warned me. While Big Mama made Daddy and Shanice search for my earring on their knees, while she announced she was rewriting her will and cutting him out of everything, I stood by the door with my phone recording every second. What nobody knew was that I'd already filed an emergency motion that morning with the family court, using my legal expertise to freeze all of Daddy's access to the family trust Big Mama had established, the one he'd been pulling from for years to fund his lifestyle. I'd cited financial elder abuse statutes and included affidavits from Big Mama's doctor about her sound mind, and by the time that video went viral the next morning, the judge had already signed the order. Daddy woke up to a frozen bank account, a viral video, and legal papers served at breakfast, and there wasn't a thing he could do about it because I'd used the one weapon he never taught Shanice. I'd used my brain and my law degree and my patient rage. By noon, his business partners had seen the video and pulled out of deals worth millions. By evening, Mama's charity board had asked her to quietly step down. Marcus broke off the engagement before sunset, and Shanice moved back into my parents' house with nothing but her $340 dress and a phone full of comments calling her entitled. I signed Big Mama's new will at Commander's Palace over turtle soup and champagne, accepting an empire built by a woman who survived Katrina and racism and poverty, and I walked away from the family that thought my success was theirs to control. 3 months later, I stood on my balcony on Royal Street with both pearl earrings in place, watching tourists stumble past in their Mardi Gras beads. And I finally understood what Big Mama meant when she said real power ain't in how loud you scream, it's in how quiet you move. My cheek had healed without a scar, but I didn't need a mark to remember the night I chose myself, because choosing yourself ain't something you forget. It's something you carry like armor for the rest of your life. If this journey resonated with you today, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment letting me know what part of the world you're repping. I need to know who's riding with me. Your words down there might be the exact spark someone needs to keep their fire burning when they feel like giving up. We share these truths so nobody has to feel like they're fighting in the dark alone. Stay woke, watch the company you keep, and never forget that your life is a reflection of the moves you choose to make. Stay solid, you feel me?